to our next read aloud. It's me, Miss Doyle, your drama teacher in the virtual world. And you know this guy, this little rascal is Augie du Soleil. Today's story is A Bad Case of the Stripes. It's basically about how wonderful it is to not worry about what other people think of you and to just be yourself. Right, puppy? When we are just happy with who we are, it's a wonderful feeling. So remember, here in drama class, good pup. If you like the video, give one of those thumbs up and like it. You can also subscribe. Good boy. Girls and boys, wow. We're so happy you're here with us today, and we're so happy to read the story, A Bad Case of the Stripes. Thanks for coming.
Drama.
Bad Case of the Stripes by David Shannon. Pictures also by David Shannon. And they're really good pictures. A Bad Case of the Stripes. Camilia Cream loved lima beans, but she hardly ever ate them. And that was because all of her friends hated lima beans. So Camilia really didn't eat them. She was always so concerned about fitting in. She was always worried about what other people thought of her. Today she was fretting even more than usual. It was the first day of school, so there were so many people to impress. Camilia tried on 32 outfits, but none of them seemed quite right. Then, finally, she put on a pretty red dress. She looked in the mirror and she screamed. Her mother ran into the room and she screamed too. "Oh my heavens!" she cried. "You're completely covered in stripes." Well, this was certainly true. Camilla was covered from head to toe in stripes. She looked like a rainbow. Mrs. Cream spoke to Camilla immediately. "Do you feel all right?" she asked. "Well, I feel fine, but just look at me. I'm completely covered in stripes." Yes, she was, and Camilla's mother said, "You get right back to bed now, young lady. You're not going to school today." Really, Camilla felt relieved. She just didn't want to miss the first day of school, but she didn't want everyone to laugh at her, and she had no idea what to wear with those crazy stripes. That afternoon, Dr. Bumble came by to see Camilla. "Now that's most extraordinary," he exclaimed. "I've never seen anything quite like this. Are you having any coughing, sneezing, runny nose, aches, pains, chills, hot flashes, dizziness, drowsiness, shortness of breath, uncontrollable twitching?" "No," Camilla said. "I feel fine." Well then," Dr. Bumble talked to Mrs. Cream privately, "I don't see any reason why this young lady can't go to school tomorrow. Take some of these." And he handed her some medicine. "And this should clear up those stripes in the next few days. If you have any problems, you know where to find me. Good day," he said, and he left. But not before he left a bill for Mrs. Cream. Well, the next day was a disaster. Everyone at school laughed at Camilla. They called her Camilia Cream and Night of the Living Lollipop. She tried her best to act as if everything were normal, but when the class did the Pledge of Allegiance, she broke out into red, white, and blue stripes and stars. The kids thought that was great, and they just started yelling out things to Camilla. One yelled, "Hey, let's see some purple polka dots." And sure enough, Camilla turned all purple polka dotty. Someone else called out, "Hey, checkerboard!" And sure enough, Camilla broke out in a pattern of squares. Oh, soon everybody was shouting things, and Camilla was changing faster than you can change the channels on your TV set. That night, Dr. Harms, the school principal, called. "Yeah, I'm so sorry, Mrs. Cream, but I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camilla home from school. Yes. You see, she's just too much of a distraction. You understand, don't you?" Yes. I think I've been getting calls from other parents, and they're afraid that those stripes might be contagious. Camilla was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that just 2 days ago, everyone liked her, and now nobody even wanted to be in the same room with her. Her father wanted to make her feel better, so he said, "Isn't there something I can get for you, honey?" What really she wanted was a big plate of juicy green lima beans. But she had been laughed at enough for one day, so Camilla just said, "No, Dad, I'm fine." Well, yes. Most extraordinary. Yes. I see. Dr. Bumble mumbled when Mrs. Cream phoned him the very next day. Yes. I think I'd better bring in the specialist. We'll be right over. About an hour later, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats, and he introduced them to the Creams. "This is Dr. Grop, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Crickpick, and Dr. Young." Then the specialist went to work on Camilla. They squeezed and jabbed, they tapped and tested. It was all extremely uncomfortable. Yes. "Well, it's not the mumps," said Dr. Grop. "Or the measles," said Dr. Sponge. "Yes, and it's definitely not the chicken pox," said Dr. Cricket. "Or a sunburn," said Dr. Young. Don't worry. Augie doesn't want a sunburn either. "Try these," said the specialist, and each of them handed her a bottle with different colored pills. "Take one of these before bed every night." And then they all marched out the front door, leaving the bill on the table. Well, that night, Camilla took all of her medicine, and it was awful. When she woke up the next morning, she did feel different, but when she got dressed, her clothes didn't fit anymore. They just felt wrong. She looked in the mirror, and there, staring at her, was a giant multicolored pill with her face on it. Well, by now, the TV news had heard all about Camilla. Reporters from every channel were outside her house. They were telling the story of the bizarre case of the incredible changing kid. Wow! The Creams were swamped by all kinds of remedies, from psychologists, allergists, herbalists, nutritionists, psychics, an old medicine man, a guru, and even a veterinarian. Every so-called expert only added to poor Camilla's strange appearance, and it was hard to even recognize Camilla. She sprouted roots and berries and crystals and feathers and a long furry tail. But nothing worked. One day, a woman who called herself an environmental therapist claimed that she could cure Camilla. Close your eyes and breathe deeply and become one with the room. Oh, I wish you hadn't said that, said Camilla, and slowly she started to melt into the walls of her own room. Her bed became her mouth, her nose was her dresser, the two paintings were her eyes, and then the therapist screamed, "Ah!" and she ran out of the house. "What are we going to do?" sobbed Mr. Cream. "It just keeps getting worse and worse." "Yes, dear, I know," said Mrs. Cream. At that moment, Mrs. Cream heard a little knock, knock, knock on the front door. And as she opened it, there stood an old woman who was just as plump and as sweet as a strawberry. "Excuse me," she said sweetly. "I think that I can help." She went into Camilla's room and looked around. My. This is a bad case of the stripes. The worst I've ever seen. She looked into her bag and took out a big plate of green, juicy lima beans and said, "I think these might do the trick." "Are those magic beans?" asked Mrs. Cream. "Oh, no, dear. There's no such thing as magic beans. These are just plain old lima beans. And I bet you'd like some, wouldn't you, Camilla?" Camilla wanted a big, heaping, juicy plate of lima beans more than just about anything else. But she was too afraid to admit it. Yuck, she said. "I don't want those. I hate lima beans." "Oh," said the old woman. "I guess I was wrong about you." Oh dear. And with that, the woman picked up her bag and started towards the door. Camilla watched as the old woman walked away. Ooh, those beans would taste so good right now. And being laughed at for eating them was nothing compared to everything that she'd been going through. She finally just couldn't take it anymore. "Wait!" she said. "I do like lima beans! I do!" "Oh, I thought so," said the old woman. Ah, yes. She came back, took out a handful of beans, and popped them into Camilla's mouth. Wow! Suddenly, the branches, the feathers, the squiggly tails began to disappear, and the whole room swirled around. When it stopped, there stood Camilla, and everything was back to normal. "I'm cured!" she shouted. "Yes," said the woman. "I knew the real you was in there somewhere." And then she went out the front door and disappeared into the crowd. Well, after that, Camilla was never quite the same again. Some of the kids thought she was weird, but she didn't care. She didn't care one bit. She ate all the lima beans that she wanted, and she never ever had even a touch of the stripes again. The end.
Drama, drama, drama.